2023 is going to be the year of congestion pricing, AVs, EVs, and data and technology. And AVs are right up there because they see that there's an opportunity to come into the marketplace.
This is Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Good to be with you on the second edition of Transit Unplugged for 2023. And today is a great episode because in addition to a wonderful interview with Matthew Daus, our newsmaker interview, president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators, we're also going to start a new feature of the program, and that is a focus on leadership. Over the last year or so, on our every other week, what we had called our News and Views show, we were including a future of public transportation segment where we talked about what's going on in the future of public transportation and where I might be signing books or speaking, et cetera. And we may still do that from time to time. But in its place, we're going to bring a regular component, which will be on leadership development. So many of you have told me the role that Transit Unplugged has played in your life and in your career. Couple friends of mine in Florida who have moved up recently in their positions in their career said they owed it largely to listening to this podcast and the impact that the interviews with our transit leaders had on their lives. What better way to learn about what's happening in the industry, what it takes to be a CEO and a leader in the industry, than to hear directly from other CEOs and senior executives who have done just that. But we're going to add to that component now a new feature where we talk to leadership development experts. That's right. People who are consultants, who have their own companies that do leadership development. We're going to ask them what it takes to grow your career. What are some of the key leadership skills and attributes? And how do you build them? How do you grow them in your own life? And today I'm excited to kick off that feature with Dale Walls, the founder of Lions Guide, which is a leadership development company. He's a good friend of mine. I've appeared on his podcast as well. And Dale's going to kick us off. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll have Lawrence L. Harper on, who is a trainer. And then we're going to bring you a great interview I did with Ulyss Cleckley, who is the head of Miami-Dade. He actually, at the Florida Public Transportation Association conference, I asked him to kind of do a stand-up talk on leadership for a CEO roundtable we're doing. And we're going to take the audio from that and air it for you. We'll have some other great leaders and leadership developers come on the program and talk about that. And hopefully you'll enjoy that. Let me know what you think. If you like what you're hearing on Transit Unplugged, let us know. Click a like on whatever platform you're on and share it on your social media and with your fellow employees and colleagues at work and at home. Let them hear about the great work that you think is happening here on the podcast. But first, now today, let's also take a look at our headline news for this episode. Two really interesting stories that are based on hot topics right now. As you know, the number of bus drivers across the U.S. is a big issue. Many transit agencies are wrestling with not being able to attract and retain their bus operators. Well, one transit agency in Memphis is trying a unique approach. The Memphis Area Transit Authority is partnering with a company called Tutris Childcare on Demand. And they're providing a new child care benefit in order to attract employees. The benefit will include a $200 per month in financial assistance toward this. And MATA working parents now have access to the Tutris platform, which will enable them to quickly search, vet, and enroll their children in real time. This company has over 185,000 licensed child care providers on its nationwide network, and they provide parents options, which include for full-time or part-time care, drop-in care, after-school programs, summer camps, and care for non-standard hours, an important option for drivers with night and weekend shifts. My good friend Bakara Malden, Deputy Chief Executive Officer of MATA, said, "We're proud of the valued service our team provides to Memphis with over 5 million passenger trips each year. And by partnering with Tutris, we're appealing to a new generation of workers who care about the community and want to work for an organization that cares about them." That's a great approach, I think, and we'll see if other folks do it, and we'll let you know as we continue to stay in touch with Bakara and with Gary Rosenfeld, the CEO there, how that's working. Is that helping them to attract new drivers and new employees there? And now we move up north to the United States, to Boston, to a story out of the Boston Herald from this last week related to the COVID vaccine. The story reads that 8 employees who were fired for not complying with the MBTA's vaccine mandate. MBTA is the acronym for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, who runs the transit system there. Those 8 employees will be given the opportunity to return to work following the T's decision to remove the pandemic-era restriction. The MBTA rescinded its vaccine mandate on December 2nd, 2022, according to a memo sent to employees by outgoing General Manager Steve Poftak. In the memo, Poftak said, "We now know," this is a quote, "we now know that being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19, unquote. And the letter cited updated CDC guidelines regarding identical quarantine and isolation protocols for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals as the reason for removing the policy. So MBTA spokesperson Lisa Battiston said, as a result of the vaccine policy being rescinded, 8 previously non-compliant employees will be offered an opportunity to return to work if vacancies exist through a negotiated settlement agreement with their respective union. The 8 employees are all bus drivers and members of the MBTA's largest union, the Boston Carmen's Local 589. They are not currently slated to receive back pay. Well, that's a look at headline news on today's episode of Transit Unplugged. Now stay tuned for our interview with Matthew Daus, president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators. And then later in the podcast, our new feature on leadership development with leadership expert Dale Walls. Thanks again for being with us on Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort with Matthew Daus. Matthew currently serves as Transportation Technology Chair at the City University of New York's Transportation Research Center of the City College of New York, where he conducts research and continues to be extensively published as an expert on ground transportation regulation and technology. Mr. Daus also continues to serve since 2009 as president of the International Association of Transportation Regulators, a nonprofit educational peer group of government transportation regulators from around the world promoting best regulatory and innovative practices. Mr. Daus is also the longest-serving commissioner, chair, and CEO of the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, where he served from 2001 to 2010. He's currently a partner at Windels, Marx, Lane and Mittendorf, LLP, where he founded and chairs the Transportation Practice Group since 2010. Matthew, I can't believe we haven't had you on here before, man. You're the man.
I know, but better late than never. I'm psyched, and it's really good to see you and your listeners, and congrats on your book, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm still, getting through it, but very excited for you. And it needed a story that needed to be told about equity, inclusion, and I think it's going to have a lot of positive repercussions for policymakers. So thanks for taking the time to do that for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to have you on the podcast. We've actually had quite a good focus on New York City. We had, the president of New York City Transit, Rich Davey, on at the end of last year. We've got you on this week. And next week is Catherine Rinaldi, CEO of Metro Trains North and Long Island Railroad. So a great focus on the Big Apple on the show.
A lot going on. I met Rich before, and I'm excited for the energy he's bringing over from, I think he's coming from Massachusetts. So we're excited to have him here, and hopefully we'll get some meaningful change at MTA.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that. Let's just dive right in.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing and how it will impact and improve public transportation in New York City, obviously, but you're doing work internationally and across the country.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things I'll bring up, and obviously congestion pricing is on everybody's minds in New York. Everybody's looking at that now, and I have 2 hats that I wear. One that is new. I'm now chair of the Transportation Law Committee for the New York City Bar Association. The
Wow.
Bar Association gets very involved in some of these issues, and we opine on legal issues. It could be cameras in the subways, construction on the BQE. Could be as gritty as that, or it could be as broad as what we just completed with the IATR, and it's on our website, www.iatr.global. Our group is a group of taxi and TNC and commissioners from all over the world, but it also includes public transit agencies and transportation departments. It's a very unique group, and our focus and our mission is multimodal mobility innovation for all. We've gone beyond taxis and TNCs and Ubers and Lyfts existing on an island, but we're looking to try to integrate with public transit and with data platforms. And one of the things that we just put out is congestion mitigation principles, guiding principles for policymakers, 10 points, giving a presentation at TRB on it, but it's on the front page of our website if you want to see it. And it talks about the things that policymakers need to do to tackle congestion. There's no one size fits all solution here. You can't just wave a magic wand and do congestion pricing and the problems are going to go away. You need to look at a lot of different things. And that report kind of delves into that issue.
I think a lot of people don't realize that pre-pandemic, New York City represented 40% of the total transit ridership on a daily basis for all of America. There's other hot topics that I'd like to get your opinions on, Matthew, and that is when it comes to the driver shortage, the role of taxi cabs and TNCs. It's very important in this. I recently just returned from a trip to Dubai where taxi cabs are integrally involved in the public transit system. They're actually, up on the screens through their mobile data terminals so they can be dispatched by the transit agency. What is your thought about the driver shortage and the role of taxi cabs, TNCs, et cetera, in helping to mitigate that?
By the way, I've been to Dubai many times, and I it's an interesting system they have. They and Abu Dhabi and have a franchise system where the government has their own taxi service and they compete with franchises they give out. And they have a data room like I've never seen anywhere else, talking about public data for years now, that you can see every cab in the entire city, where it is, what it's doing.
That's right.
And you don't really have that in the US, but
just FYI, what's great about that is my company, Trapeze, is the one that makes all those mobile data terminals in every taxi cab, all 11,500 in Dubai. It was fun to sit there and say, hey, that's my logo up there.
I love them. And there's some issues like, they're way advanced on automated enforcement too. Like you're getting a ticket and you can get 5 tickets for speeding and there's no cop around. They have cameras everywhere, but
that's interesting.
An advanced governance system like Singapore as well. I was in London, I was in Manchester, Ireland. I was all over the world this year, honestly. I came back from Kyoto, Japan, not too long ago. Everywhere I go, there's a driver shortage. This is a universal thing.
Okay.
It has a lot to do with, labor trends, like even in hotels, like, there's a lot of people went back to their countries to claim their checks from the government, during the pandemic. There are a lot of people that just gave up. And in the US, a big issue, Paul, was in the industries that I'm involved in, like the for-hire ground transportation, buses, school buses, motor coaches, taxis, limos. It was very disenchanting for a lot of these drivers to get a check from the government that was more than their original paycheck. This, I think, got a lot of drivers to say, what am I doing this for? This is a tough job. Whether you're taking school kids around or, if you're a private bus driver or a taxi driver, you're dealing with the public. And you're not getting paid a lot of money, so why would you go back? So I think that plus the insurance, a lot of independent contractor drivers in the industry, they couldn't afford to maintain the insurance when there was no work. So we just saw people leave. And the trucking industry has been dealing with this for years now. There's been, a lot of people are trading out. And I don't know what the solution is here, honestly. I think there's a big truncation taking place. I think there's room for truncation. If a company's going to go out of business, they're going to get more efficient. You see Uber partnering with taxis in New York to try to, hold on to their labor force and get more drivers involved in what they deliver because they have a cap on the number of cars. So I think you're going to see people, there's already people recruiting, and it's hard to recruit for a job like that. I mean, it's one thing to drive for a limo service where you can say, hey, you can take, Liam Neeson around today and Sylvester Stallone tomorrow, and you could be dealing with really important, fun people. But, getting folks to do a job where they're earning much less money and dealing with a population of folks that, can't afford to pay, like the Sylvester Stallones of the world, which is a very limited niche market. It's hard to make it an attractive job because you drive around all day. You have to be on the road, the maximum amount of hours to get a return. And it's just a tough job. And some of the cities have been doing gas surcharges and I think fare increases like they just did in New York, which will help, and there will be a period of time when the ridership goes down and it recovers, but the prices are going up and up and up. And I think we're going to see more of that, more consolidation, less companies around in the coming years in all sectors on the private side. And, that's kind of like, there's really no end in sight other than, retooling operations, trying to make the job pay more. But when you do that, passengers have to pay more. And
that's right.
You're going to lose some riders for good. And where they go is anybody's guess. Are they going to ride mass transit?
Right.
Are they buying a bike? Or, who knows?
Yeah.
Are they buying a car? That remains to be seen. The modal shift.
Yeah, well, it makes me wonder, and I'm interested in your opinion on this. Is that why you think there's been a very fast uptick, to be honest with you, in the last 6 months on the use of autonomous vehicles in taxi cab fleets and other places, especially in some cities out west? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think the AVs are smelling blood in the water here. I think they're saying, hey, they're deploying like wild. San Francisco, Arizona. You could take a driverless Waymo 1 in Phoenix Airport right now. There's nobody in the car.
Nobody there.
2023 is going to be the year of congestion pricing, AVs, EVs, and data and technology. And AVs are right up there because they see that there's an opportunity to come into the marketplace. And I think people are going to be talking about it more and seeing that it's really here. I don't think it's pie in the sky. I really don't. Whether it succeeds as a business model, ride hail versus like what they're doing in Trenton and Contra Costa with microtransit shuttles, and I think both are being tested. We'll see how it prevails, but the technology and the public acceptance of it, I think we're going to get major strides in that area now because of the deployments in California and in Arizona and possibly elsewhere, Florida and other places. It's really happening. It's here. So I think all of these changes post-pandemic have led these companies to speed up their deployments. So we're talking about deployment now, ride hailing. We're not talking about testing as much as we did, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's going to be a big year for automation, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I know we could continue to talk for quite a while. Maybe we'll have you back again sometime soon. Sure. I wish you the best as you do your presentation at TRB. That's the week this episode will be airing. And we look forward to continuing a conversation and potential collaboration in the future, Matthew.
Absolutely, Paul. It's good to see you, and thanks for having me on.
Hi, I'm Elea Carey, a communications consultant who loves working with public transit agencies. New hires and promotions are part of any organization's life, to the extent that the ways we communicate personnel changes can get kind of boring. The old executives on the move theme that's both obligatory and usually ignored. What can you do to really engage your audiences when you communicate organizational changes? First, anybody can read a resume. What kind of story can you weave to make your readers interested in why you've decided to place this employee as you have? Interview your employee to find details about their work or life experiences to show they're prepared for this moment. You should also keep your values in mind. How does this person align with your most important organizational beliefs and intentions? Using the opportunity to remind your audiences of your values, try to communicate 2 or 3 specific values this employee's work will support. Finally, what can you do to keep your news relevant? Is there a current project this employee will work on or something your agency's been lacking and needs to address? Maybe there's a story in the community news that you can peg your announcement to. If you'd like to talk more about communicating personnel changes or anything else related to communications in public transit, look me up on LinkedIn. My first name is spelled E-L-E-A, last name C-A-R-E-Y.
Thanks for being with us as we continue on today's episode of Transit Unplugged. This year, we're going to begin a new feature, and that is on every other week, we're going to have an outside speaker who is an expert in leadership come in and talk to us about leadership in the industry. Most of our listeners are mid-level to upper-level executives or people in the transit industry or government. And many of you have told me recently I was just at a conference a couple months ago, and one of you came up to me and said, Paul, I just got promoted to this new job, and it's largely because I listened to the podcast, because I was able to integrate the information that you provide with best practices and leadership stuff from your guests, and it's really helped make me a better leader. And I thought, why not really just focus and drill down on leadership? And so in order to do that, our first guest is a good friend of mine, Dale Walls. Dale is the founder of Lions Guide. And Dale, welcome, and thank you for doing the program today.
Yeah, no, it's an honor. Happy to be here. Thank you, Paul.
I've been a guest on Dale's podcast as well. Dale, tell us about Lions Guide and a little about yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, a little bit about me. I guess Lions Guide's really my second mountain. My first mountain in business, leadership at least, was a company I founded called Corsica Technologies that was an IT services company, ended up being one of the best in class in the nation. And I grew that to about 200 people before I finally exited that company after selling it about 18 months prior. When I exited that company, getting into Lions Guide, I was just, really, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was looking back at what did I love doing? Well, I loved, especially when my company got to the stage where I was leading leaders. My role then, certainly as the CEO, was a visionary and all those things that come along with the CEO. But man, the favorite part of my day was when I was doing my one-on-ones with my direct reports. I was leading the team meetings, leading town halls. And, just kind of while I was figuring things out after, I exited the company, someone kind of hit me with that, said, "Hey, Dale, you ought to be talking to other people that are starting businesses or leading organizations because they can learn a lot from you." And at first I was like, thanks, sort of compliment, whatever. And then I slept on it and I realized, like, I love doing that. And if I could continue doing that, man, what do they say? If you do what you love, you don't have to work another day in your life. And I love that. I just love helping give leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs some perspective, that I help them find their own answers, to be honest with you. So
that's good. Well, so you're in basically leadership development full time now. And that's why I thought you'd be a perfect first guest for this, because that's really what I want to do with this segment of the podcast. We're heard now in 130 countries. And the folks that are there, I want their influence to grow. I want them to become better leaders. I want them to do a better job at what they're doing. And I know you focus on three key components: courage, clarity, and leadership. So as you would talk to a mid-level transit manager, in Kansas City, let's say, what would you tell them today?
I think it's, when it comes to courage, clarity, and leadership, when it comes to established clarity, I say we have to lead ourselves first, and that's what I try to. The number one tenet of leadership is setting the example, right? Your people are not going to believe the messenger if they aren't going to believe the message if they don't believe the messenger, right? So it starts with us, right? We've got to level up. Leadership is hard. And for us to level up, one of the first things we need to do is establish clarity. What does that mean? That's the vision. That's your own knowledge. That's operating in truth, right? So as far as vision is concerned, like how do you see yourself? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? How do you want to interact with people? What makes you successful? What is your vision for the day today? What's your vision for the day tomorrow? What's your vision for this week? I mean, a key element of leadership is you're the one carrying the flag. You're leading the team to some sort of vision. And I feel like you need to have both: a vision for yourself as well as a vision for your team and organization where you're going to go. Additionally, the second part of clarity is just knowledge, right? A lot of times when we're stuck, it's because we just don't know something, and as leaders, we get stuck often. So another part of established clarity is just that, like, we have to be competent, we have to be knowledgeable. And are we going to have all the answers? No. But, when we hit those points where we're stuck or unclear, we've got to check in and realize, like, there's something I don't know here, and we need to seek knowledge. And the other part of that is also seeking truth, right? How many, one of the oftentimes things we see in failures of leadership is communication, right? We're going off misinformation or we're making assumptions. So one of the things in this area of clarity, I talk to people, it's like, in addition to vision and knowledge, you need to operate in truth, right? You can't operate on hearsay. You can't operate on assumption. You've got to seek truth, be an agent of truth, and don't make assumptions, right? As much as possible. You're going to have to make a call sometimes, and you might not have all the answers, but you need to really work hard to make sure you're operating in truth, as far as the things that you're doing.
Let me ask you to dive in on that just a second. One of the big complaints that I've heard in larger bureaucracies and organizations I've been involved in is I never know what's going on. People aren't communicating to me. It's not clear to me what's happening. And my passion, I'm a communicator, so I probably overshare. So when I've been in positions of responsibility, I tell them, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. Is that important, do you think?
Absolutely. And because we have the curse of knowledge, right? When we're the ones in charge,
I've never heard it called that before, the curse of knowledge.
And I'll tell you what that means, right? We have the curse of knowledge. We have all this information in our head and we walk around like everyone else can see what the heck's going on in our head. And
Yeah.
it's the furthest thing from the truth, but we still operate as such, right? So when it comes to clarity, it's not only just clarity for yourself, but making sure your team's clear. And so you need to communicate. You have to communicate often, in appropriate channels, and you need to seek feedback that affirms that your clarity has been gained, right? When you're communicating with your team or your direct reports or whatever. Hey, so tell me what you just heard, right? Like when I was working with direct reports, so tell me how you're hearing that, because they're going to say something back to you, and that's going to tell you real quick if you guys are on the same page or not. So it's an important, at all levels, whether it's your direct reports, or just a team or organization, communications got to be tip top.
And what do you mean by courage? So let's move from clarity to courage now.
Courage, to me, courage is rooted in success. And how I came to just be a part of telling people that is that I kind of reflected one day. I said, the times I've had successes were the times that I acted courageously, right? And the times I had failures were when I let my fears get the best of me. What does that mean? Like, I joined the Marine Corps. No, I didn't follow like my father and grandfather or anyone else into the military. Like some stories are, not all of them, but some stories are, I joined because my dad joined or my grandfather served or whatever. I joined because it was something different and I saw it as a path. But that took a lot of courage to go, yeah, sign me up for the Marine Corps, and let's go, as an example. But that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. It got me out of my small town. It got me a career in IT. It got me my first roots in leadership training, frankly. But to me, courage equals success. And when it comes to courage, we need to understand that courage is a virtue. And what does that mean? It's like when you're acting courageously, you're choosing the greater good over a lesser good, right? It's meaning, here's another way to put this. We go to all these organizations and they got their core values on the wall. Yeah. And one that's always there is integrity, right? Like what organization not go in? What are your core values? Like integrity is going to be in the list somewhere. And that's nice. What do we know integrity is? Doing the right thing even when no one's looking. That's, to me, a pay to play, core value. That just needs to be, you shouldn't even have to put that on the wall anymore. Like if you don't have integrity, you don't belong here. Let's reserve that space for some more bigger, meaningful things.
Aspirational, yeah.
Yeah, aspirational goal. But one of the things in this area is I go, but if integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's looking, I tell people like courage is doing the right thing even when everyone is looking.
That's good. I like that.
Because that takes courage, yeah, right? Man. But we're talking about the right thing, okay? Not being bold and courageous. There's some nuance there. Courageous is about virtue, doing the right thing, going for the greater good. I mean, I could go in a local bar and pick a fight with the biggest dude in there, and that's pretty bold, but there's no virtue in that. There's nothing courageous about there. There's no good, right? And that's really the difference of courage.
I like that.
And why that's important, and people always talk about like being fearless and all that. I don't care if it's the professional athlete or the actor on the stage or whatever, like none of us are operating without fear. What we are operating with is courage despite those fears. And so I hang my hat on this because a lot of things that are holding us back to be great leaders, great producers, whatever the case may be, are our own fears. They're the things that are holding us back. And I preach this. And I think, one of the things with regard to courage and clarity and how they intermingle is, I talk a lot about the courage and clarity success loop. And what does that mean? Well, the more clarity you get, right, the more things that you can see, the more knowledge you have, right? What is that doing? When you're establishing clarity in all these areas, it's giving you confidence, right? Like if you know what's around the corner, you're going to go around the corner, right? The more clarity you establish, the more confidence you get. And the more confidence you get, well, the more courageously you're going to act, right? Because what do we fear? We fear the unknowns, right? So that's why courage and clarity to me are like really tip top in trying to instill kind of like a success philosophy on some of just the way I've learned things.
Yeah, that's good. And let's spend a few minutes then on just the overall topic of leadership.
When it comes to leadership, it's something that to me, when I was in Marine Corps boot camp, and we were getting, we would do some classroom training and stuff like that. We would get a ton of lessons on leadership traits and principles and different stories of leadership from past engagements and things like that. And, here we all were just recruits. And, I remember someone just kind of asked like, well, what, when we get out, we're not going to be in charge of anyone, we're just going to be privates, when we went to the Fleet Marine Corps. And the response from the drill instructor was like, hey, regardless of you're a private or PFC or general, and whether you're in charge of other people or not, you're always in charge of yourself. And these leadership traits and principles and the things that you'll learn around leadership, if nothing else, they always apply to you, right? I've got friends that go, Dale, you're the most self-disciplined person I know. Well, self-discipline is just self-leadership. That's all it is, right? I mean, we start throwing around words that define leadership, because leadership, Flip, my leadership director, we often joke like leadership's like the Force, right? If you're a Star Wars fan, like it's everywhere and it affects everything, and it's good. It's good and bad, right? And so leadership is so key that we need to know that we have to lead ourselves. So when we throw things around, what is leadership? Well, it's the vision, it's building the systems, it's the culture and the mindset and all those things. Well, all those things on our own personal goals, our own personal objectives, like that's all we're doing for ourselves, right? We're establishing a vision for ourselves. We're setting our systems up, right? All those things that we do as leaders of a team is what self-discipline is, right? It's us leading ourselves. So it's across the board, really, really important.
That's good. It's I don't know if I heard it in a movie or where I saw it, but I remember somebody saying, you want to change the world, draw a circle and start right there. Draw a circle around yourself and start right there.
Well, you hear people say like, you want to, make things better, make your bed, right? That Admiral had that speech, right?
Yeah.
And make your own bed, start there, clean up your room, clean up your house, make your yard. And I guess one of the biggest things in leadership is just setting the example, right? Even when you're leading yourself well, what I found, especially with clients, and I work with folks over a number of weeks and month to month and stuff. And usually by 4 or 5, 6 weeks in, they'll come back and go, my wife or my husband, they started doing XYZ because I was doing it. I was like, yeah, because you're leading yourself well, and that's contagious, right? Everyone is a leader, and I'll tell you why. Your power of influence is going to do one of two things for other people. What you're doing, the people closest to you, the people that care about you, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to be enabling them or you're going to be giving them permission. And what does that mean? Well, if you're doing good things for yourself, you're going to enable them to do good things for themselves as well, right? They're going to see your example and they're going, wow, look how that's working for Paul. I want to do that, right? It's the whole Roger Bannister 4-minute mile thing, right? They see things that are possible, they'll start doing it. Or you're going to give them permission, meaning if you're being mediocre, you're being lazy, you're procrastinating, you're not leading yourself well, even, you're giving them permission to do the same thing, right? And you and I both have kids and teams, and I can't imagine it not being the case in almost any situation where you're around people and they're looking at you. They're looking at you from the side, or looking up to you, whatever the case may be. You're influencing them some way. You're setting an example for them, and you're either enabling them or you're giving them permission.
That's great. Dale Walsh, thanks so much for spending a few minutes today with us, sharing with our listeners, leadership tools, leadership tactics. Appreciate the work you're doing, and thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Transit Unplugged, the podcast. How would you like to see behind-the-scenes footage of the agencies that Paul visits? Then be sure to check out the new Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube, where transit evangelist Paul Comfort dives into the culture, the food, and the transit of major cities around the world. You'll see the operations control centers, how maintenance shops work, and the latest innovations taking place at agencies around the globe as we work together to improve the lives of our transit riders and our communities. Be sure to subscribe to Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube or at transitunplugged.com.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged News and Views with our guests, Matthew Daus and Dale Walls. Next week on the show, we have Catherine Rinaldi, president of Metro North Railroad and interim president of the Long Island Railroad. If you have a question, comment, or would like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. And don't forget to head over to transitunplugged.com to sign up for the newsletter, so you're always in the loop with whatever's going on with the show. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.